Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you, my dear beautiful girls of grade 5? Welcome to grade 5. I hope you will enjoy this semester, inshallah. Today, we are not going to start the story or complete the story that we finished last year. No, we are going to study in Unit 1, Lesson 1 about the things that gave us information about the past. If we are studying about the Muslim state, about the history of Islam, about the Rashidun Caliphs, what helped us to know all this information about the past? The people who lived at that time died long time ago, and none of them is still alive to tell us what happened. So how did we get information? How do we get information about the past? This is our lesson today. Last year in grade 4, you studied the meaning of evidence. We said that evidence can be old books, old remains, old maps, buildings, rocks, paintings on rocks. Today we are going to study more about evidence. What is evidence? Evidence is anything that shows us how something happened. Also, it gives us information about the past. This evidence can be what? Remains of buildings, tools, bones, old books and maps. Anything that was left behind by the people of the past can be called evidence. Their jewelry, their clothes, their tools, their weapons, everything that the old people who died left behind after the death can be called evidence. Okay, look here. This evidence is an important source of information about life long ago. Now we are going to talk about these sources in more details. Look at the first picture. The first picture is a picture for an old book. This old book is called evidence and it is a source of information. If we have a very old building like the pyramids, the temples, the old mosques, all them are sources of information. They tell us about the past and they are called evidence. What about who studied these evidence? Who studied this evidence and collect all these sources and get the information from them? A scientist like that. Can you see the scientist who is digging for an old bone? These scientists are called social scientists or archaeologists. Again, this scientist is a social scientist or archaeologist. Who are archaeologists? That scientist in the picture is an archaeologist. Archaeologists are social scientists who study and use evidence to work out how people lived in the past. And then they describe this and write this in books. They are the history books that we study now or today. From the most important or an example of a very important source or a very important evidence is the Rosetta Stone. What is the Rosetta Stone? It's a stone with 3 kinds of writings, 3 languages. The first language is the Greek language, the Demotic language, and the hieroglyphic language. The hieroglyphics is the language of the ancient Egyptians. Before, when scientists saw some paintings on the walls of the tombs of the ancient Egyptians or the pharaohs, they could not understand anything. But when the Rosetta Stone was found, the scientists knew that the writing of the hieroglyphics is the same for the Greek. Scientists already know the Greek language. So with the use of the Greek language, they could translate and understand the hieroglyphic writing, which is the writing of the ancient Egyptians. So what is the Rosetta Stone? It's a tablet with Greek and the ancient Egyptian writing carved on it, as you can see from the picture. When scientists worked out that the Greek said the same as the Egyptian writing, they found the key to understand hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics is the old Egyptian writing, is the ancient Egyptian writing. Again, so after they could understand hieroglyphics or the ancient Egyptian writing, they could translate all the writings on the walls of the tombs and the temples and could understand so much information about lives of the ancient Egyptians, how they lived, what they did, how they died, and so on. Now we are going to study about sources from more modern times. Okay. Are all the sources, is all the evidence from the past, old bones, old buildings, old books, old paintings on rocks? No. We can have modern or new sources of information. What is it? Social scientists today can use many different sources to find about the past. Like what? Number one, artifacts. What is the meaning of artifacts? They are things that people make or build. Anything that people make or build is called artifact. Like tools, machines, buildings. Museums are full of them, and we can get a lot of information from these artifacts. Next one, written sources like documents, letters, notes, books. Even newspaper reports and newspaper articles are written sources of information. We can read them to get information. They are written, and that's why we call them written sources of information. Also, we have visual sources. What's the meaning of visual sources? The sources that can be seen. We get information from them by sight. Photographs and paintings, we see them, we look at them, we understand them, and then they can tell us a lot, and that's why they are called visual sources. Oral sources, people's stories and memories, can tell us what happened to them in the past. When people talk about the past, this is an oral source. So we have oral sources, visual sources, written sources, and we have artifacts. So now we have another classification for sources, primary and secondary sources. And what is the difference between them? And that would be the last point in our lesson. When social scientists study an event, when they study something in the past, they have to decide whether or not the source is accurate, tells us accurate information or not. Sometimes we can get information, but they are not accurate information, and that's why we cannot depend on them. What is the primary source? The primary source gives us first-hand information. Like what? Primary sources are more accurate and reliable. We can depend on them to get knowledge. We can record the information and depend on the information given by a primary source. Then secondary sources. Can we give an example? Yes. If a person who described or wrote about an event was actually there to witness, someone who saw what happened and now he is writing about it or describing it, so that person is a primary source because he already witnessed and saw what happened and then started to describe or tell about it. But what about the secondary source? The secondary source gives second-hand information. What's the meaning of this? If a journalist talked to someone who saw an event and then started to write an article, a newspaper article. This newspaper article by the journalist is a secondary source because that journalist did not see what happened. He just asked another one who witnessed or saw what happened. So the secondary source is another source of information, but it is not accurate or reliable as the primary source. For example, if we have a picture for what happened in the past, so this is a primary source. If we have someone who talked about a picture that he saw for what happened, so this is a secondary source. So you have to decide, or scientists have to decide, whether this source is primary or secondary, whether it's accurate or not, because they should collect accurate information. Okay, and then tell us about what they discovered. This is our lesson today, or the first lesson in this semester. I hope you understand it. I uploaded this worksheet on Classera. You can go back to it. Also, we are going to explain more during the VR class. Thanks for being with me, and goodbye till we meet again. Thank you, girls.